Hello and welcome. Welcome to another episode. Y'all, this one is going to be a good one. All right, jumping right in. Did you know that not having a plan can make you more stressed during birth and maybe even have your birth to be a little bit more risky? That's true. Well, if you are overwhelmed by having to plan for your birth, especially if you're a first time mom and maybe you don't know what to plan for, you are in the right place. You are absolutely in the right place because I'm going to go over all of that today. By the end of this live, you'll not only know what some of the biggest mistakes are to avoid, but you'll also be able to take away some simple, actionable steps to create a birth plan that works for you. So, if that is something that you are interested in, then stay to the end because I also have a free resource available for you that I'm going to discuss and talk about. So, you'll be able to get access to that as well. If this is your first time tuning in to one of my live videos, my name is Stephanie Poole. I am a certified doula and lactation consultant. I help first-time moms prepare for pregnancy, birth, and postpartum and breastfeeding. There's four: pregnancy, birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding with confidence. So if you're pregnant, if you are a first time mom, if you are looking to prepare for your birth and have a smooth transition into motherhood, then you are in the right place, which means that you should be subscribed to this channel. If you are not already, like, I'm asking, girl, what are you doing? I mean, what even are you doing? All right, listen, let's go ahead and jump into today's topic. You guys know I always bring my notes because I like to bring the heat. Definitely let me know where you're joining me from. I am in Michigan right now, in Detroit, and we, as of 1 o'clock, are under a weather advisory. So there's that. Let me know what's going on with you in your neck of the woods. All right, so let's jump in by talking about why a birth plan matters. Why does it matter? You hear about it. You've probably, if you're pregnant, you've probably seen people have freebies for it, right? Where you could download a PDF. We're going to get into all that today. But hello. But today I want to talk about why it's important. It's important because it's not just a wish list. Your birth plan is actually a communication tool between you, your provider, and your birth team. Say it with me, y'all. You, your provider, and your birth team. It's a communication tool. It actually helps you, hello, it helps you to communicate what your birth preferences are so that you're not stressed when you're actually laboring, when you're actually delivering, right? So get this, and I found this to be so interesting. You guys know I love facts and I always talk from evidence-based curriculum. So this is not just my theory, this is research here. It says research shows that moms who have a plan feel more in control and experience less stress during birth. So when you saw my title that says, no plan equals risky birth, it's because it's true. When you don't have a plan, you feel more stressed. And because of the stress, now you're putting your body and your baby into this position of having a rougher transition versus having a plan. Now, what do I mean by having a plan and communicating with your provider? What I mean is, like, let's say, for instance, you're interested in having in cord clamping. Do you guys know what cord clamping is? If you do, put a yes in the comments. Cord clamping or delayed cord clamping is, once the baby is born, they will delay cutting the cord for a little while. Now, it depends on where you birth, uh, what the protocol is. If you're at home, you get to decide between you and your provider. If you're at a birthing center or a hospital, though, you may be under certain guidelines that the hospital or the birth center abides by. So you may not. The point I'm trying to make is that's why having a plan is so important, because you need to discuss all of this with your doctor before you are in labor, before you have the baby, before you give birth, so that you can be on one accord, right? Of one mind on what your birth preferences are. And your provider can then talk to you and say, okay, hey, this is totally doable. Or your provider will say, well, based on your medical history, X, Y, and Z, we could do this. I know at the hospital that I was at, there was a strict protocol that they would only delay it, I want to say by like a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. And that was enough to let that rush of the red blood cells get through the umbilical cord. So every facility is different. It depends on where you are and what their guidelines are. But these are all things you need to discuss. And then once you discuss it with your provider, you need to put it into your birth plan and communicate that with your birth team so that it's a known thing, right? While you're laboring, while you're birthing, while you're pushing, you don't have to worry about making that decision, because your doctor and your birth team are aware of your birth preferences based on the plan that was made. So if all of that makes sense, then go ahead and drop a baby emoji in the chat to let me know if you're excited for your birth experience, especially with a plan. All right. So with that being said, let's jump into the first big mistake. One of the biggest mistakes, and these are in no particular order, but the biggest mistake, number one, is thinking that a birth plan has to be rigid, that those are a set of rules that you have to go by. That is one of the biggest misconceptions, especially for my first time moms. As a doula, I specialize in helping first time moms. I've helped moms who, it's not their first time. And each experience is different. And by the way, I believe all women should have the support of a doula at every birth, even if it's your fifth birth, because there's nothing like having someone there to really support you, the mom. But enough of that. That's for another live. So for my first time moms, a lot of times they go into birth thinking that when they make a birth plan, it has to be rigid. It has to be a set of rules. It has to be, this, once I settle on this, that's it. And that is just simply not true. A birth plan has to be, in order for it to work, in order for it to be effective, it has to be something that is adaptable. And it's about, think of it like this. It's about having a roadmap and not a script. Meaning you have an outline of things that you've thought about and kind of determined, this is my preference. But based on what happens during birth, right, you may need to pivot. As a matter of fact, very few births actually occur exactly as you've planned it in your mind. Whatever your birth plan is, very few births are carried out exactly in a what we call a typical or a unremarkable birth, meaning that there was no nuances or extenuating circumstances. Those things will always occur. Always occur. I shouldn't say always, because that's so definitive, but Every person is different, and birth is like a fingerprint. Everyone has their own unique fingerprint, and birth is very similar in that way, right? Every birth is going to be different. Even if you've given birth 3 times, each birth will have its own nuances. So you can't go into it thinking that this birth plan is it and there's no room for change. Okay? So that's the first biggest mistake. And let me just kind of give some backstory about that as well. I've supported a mom, and she originally went into the birth, saying that she did not want any medication. She wanted an unmedicated birth. And so we had talked about it at length. We had a safe word that, I recommend having in place just to be able to communicate about her pain levels and things like that. We get into the thick of it, and we had to have a discussion. She reached out and was like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm feeling, and I reassured her, we've discussed this. Are you sure you want to pivot at this point? And we had to have a conversation, but afterwards she decided she was going to have some medical intervention to help ease the pain. We were able to get her help and move through it. Now, that doesn't happen all the time. Some moms I've supported, and I didn't necessarily think that they were going to be able to get all the way through, and they were champs. They went through like 5-star general. Okay. So every person is different. And that goes back to the biggest mistake that we just talked about, which is you cannot think that having a birth plan equals rigid rules. That's mistake number 1. Okay. Mistake number 2 is the copy pasting generic birth plans. Now, I feel some kind of way about this because I feel like it's hard for everyone to have that same birth plan or PDF to use that as the guide. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. I don't think it's anything wrong with downloading PDFs. I have them available, and I find them to be effective. However, anyone in my circle understands that as a doula, I have supported women, and I understand the level of support that they need. So while you might have a PDF download as a birth plan to support you for birth and those direct birth decisions, that's good, but you need more. And let me explain why. Because birth is not just the act of pushing. It is labor, it is delivery, and it is postpartum, the immediate postpartum. All of that matters. And what I mean by it matters is that your experience, how you experience it matters, and how you remember it matters. All right, let me give you an example. I had a client who she had been pregnant. We went through the pregnancy. Everything was really good. We hadn't had any issues. She was chugging right along. We get down to the last, I think she had maybe 3 weeks to go. All of a sudden, her numbers started looking a little iffy. Long story short, she went from being typical all the way to needing to have, unfortunately, a C-section, right? Well, I say unfortunately because it wasn't her first choice, but she was successful. Everything went well. And the bottom line is, it's funny because when we did our wrap up, I always, end asking questions, understanding how they felt during birth and making sure they felt supported. So I'm asking her questions, and I'm like, how was this experience for you? Tell me how you remember your birth experience. We were both there, right? But I want to hear from you what it felt like, the things that you remember, or the things that stuck out to you the most. And I could not believe, based on how many pivots we had to make, right? Once we understood that there would be some health challenges with her and the baby, I could not believe how positive she still ranked her birth journey. And it was because of the support that we had put in place by having that comprehensive support. So that's what I mean. Like, it is important to have, you'll see on the internet, oh, you just have a one-page birth plan that you need. You don't need a big PDF. You don't need a big PDF. What you need is a real living document that actually supports you from pregnancy to birth to labor to birth to postpartum and through breastfeeding, if you choose to breastfeed. That's what you need. And you need that kind of support, because when you start remembering your birth story, which will stick with you forever, by the way. My kids are older. They're in elementary and high school, and I still remember their individual birth story like it was yesterday. And so when you talk about remembering the birth story, it's important to understand that it's not just about this copy paste generic birth plan. You need a living document that is adaptable, that actually supports you all the way through, not just your preferences for the birth in isolation, and that's it. You need more support than that. So keep that in mind. All right. Mistake number 3 is not reviewing the plan with your provider, especially ahead of time. That is so important. Once you have a birth, a set of birth preferences, so you've decided the type of birth that you want to actually have, it is vitally important. Say it with me, people. It is vitally important to discuss those birth preferences with your provider. Why is that important? Because your provider is part of your birth team. Your birth team is going to be the people who advocate for you when you are not able to advocate for yourself. And what am I saying when I say you're not able to advocate for yourself? I mean, when you are in the thick of contractions and they are coming hard and they are coming, intensely, very back to back, it's almost impossible for you to make a sound decision in that state because you are in pain. And so your birth team, those preferences that you communicate with your provider ahead of time, you don't have to worry about having decision fatigue in the moment, because all of the things that are important to you, you've already pre-discussed with your provider and with your birth team. So definitely that's very important, guys. Keep that in the back of your head as you're picking out your birth preferences. You need to discuss this with your provider before you give birth. Mistake number 4, ignoring your partner's involvement. Listen, whoever you select for your birth plan or for your support team is going to be vital in helping you to get to that finish line. It's like a fighter in the ring with a coach or a trainer. If you have a bad trainer, that leaves you to do all the heavy work, right? As the fighter in the ring. But when you have a good trainer, they've supported you all the way up until the fight. And when you get in the ring, you got the light work of just focusing on the opponent because they've trained you well. You've communicated well. They're there supporting you, in between the rounds, right? That's exactly the position of your birth support team. Please don't discount how important it is first of all, select your birth team wisely. I have a video where I talk about building your birth team. It's so important. I will try to link that below. But the reason why it's important is because you don't want people in your birthing space that maybe they can't deal with high stress situations. Perhaps they themselves, deal with anxiety on some level. And so you need to be mindful of that. You need to be mindful of that. You need people that are going to not be loud and, kind of in this celebratory time. There is a time and a place for that. But when you're laboring, you need someone who's going to focus on you. You need someone who's going to keep quiet and help you to really focus in and breathe through those intense birth pains. You need someone who's going to listen to, your request. You need a light massage. Maybe, you would like a little ice to chomp on. You need people who are going to be attentive and don't mind serving you in that moment. And so, those are all things that your partner can participate in. A lot of partners want to be included in that process. And sometimes they almost feel guilty that you have to endure so much pain, right? To go through this process without them necessarily having to feel that amount of intense discomfort that you're feeling. And so it makes them feel as if they're able to really be there with you if you allow them to step in and support you by doing some of those very, very important things. So pick your birth support team wisely and allow them to really support you in that way. It's good for them. It's good for you. It's a win-win, y'all. Okay, I am on the last mistake now. Mistake number 5 is forgetting the what ifs. Forgetting the what ifs. What does that mean? That means that birth is unpredictable. Let me say that again. Birth is unpredictable. You need to prepare for unplanned scenarios. No matter how much you run the drill in your head that you want this typical birth, maybe modeled after, what you've seen, what you've heard, no matter how much that is the goal, you have to be flexible enough that you consider the what ifs. That you consider the what ifs. What are some what ifs? That you consider if you have a problem with dilation, or if there's a problem with your health, blood pressure wise, or with the baby, or, you have to not give way to fear. That's important. This is not fear mongering here, okay? I don't want you to become overwhelmed with fear about those things. And I know that as a mom, it's easy to be concerned with those negative things, almost to where they overshadow the positive process of birth. But you do need to consider the what ifs. And you need to be open that at the end of the day, and I tell this to my clients all the time, that at the end of the day, we are striving to have a healthy mom and a healthy baby, an alive mom and an alive baby. I want you to not, that is the goal. We're not veering from that, but however we have to get there is what I'm going to do within my power to get you there. So be open to the what ifs, because I said it before at the beginning, rarely does birth happen in the exact form or fashion that you expect it to. Rarely. There are a few times, but most of my clients experience some kind of nuance or some kind of pivot, is what we call it, in labor and delivery. meaning they had one preference and they had to choose, okay, that may not necessarily be the best fit. I'm going to try this here. It could just be even something as simple as, I thought I would dilate a little, I would have more progress. I'm not having that on my own. So, I'm going to now opt to have this particular intervention. One of my clients that's popping in my head, she had to have the balloon inserted. And she chose to do that over some other options that she had. But that one simple pivot allowed her to then go ahead and progress. She still had a vaginal birth. She still had a healthy baby. We were still able to breastfeed in the immediate postpartum. And she kept up with it longer for that baby than she did her first baby. And so my point in sharing that with you is, even though she had to pivot, even though she had to make a choice to go outside of her birth preference, she still had a positive birth experience because we still achieved the goal. Mom and baby were healthy, mom and baby were alive and well, and her birth experience is remembered as a positive birth experience because she did have some control, some influence over her birth experience. And I like to say this all the time. Don't allow birth to happen to you. Allow it to happen through you. Let me say that again. Don't allow birth to just happen to you. Allow it to happen through you. And I'll finish with this. You are making a plan whether or not you write the plan down. I said this the other day on live. When you go to the grocery store, I don't typically just walk in the grocery store willy-nilly. I kind of have an idea in my head, even if I haven't written down the items. I have in my head what I plan to cook for dinner, and then I proceed in grabbing those items. Right? You're making a plan. Why not write it down? The other example I give time and time and time again is also the fact that, we don't just say, we don't wake, most of us, unless you live in Vegas, maybe, most of us don't wake up and just head over to a chapel and say, I'm going to get married today. Most of us say, we're engaged, we're going to be married in 3 months, 6 months, or a year. We're looking for a venue. We need a caterer. We put planning into those things. Why? Because a wedding is a life event. Come on now. If we do all of that for a wedding, surely we should be planning for our birth. You will remember this for as long as you live. As long as you live. And you want those memories to be good memories. You want them to be empowered memories. You don't want to just allow birth to happen to you. I've had, I'm thinking of this particular client I had, and this was her second baby. Her first birth experience was not positive. She did not have me during the first birth experience. She had a lot going on with her family who was in the room when she was giving birth. She had a lot going on with the provider that she didn't really care for too much. And so listening to how she recalled her birth experience, by the time I took her on as a client for her second birth experience, that baby was already like, I think he was 4. And so this is 4 years later, and she's recounting it, and you can hear, how upset she was at how things unfolded at her birth. And so we kind of took that into account and really just revitalized things to make sure that it was about her, that she felt supported, that, she was able to feel empowered. We talked about what her preferences was before she went into labor. When we got to the hospital, it was well understood what was to be expected. She had to make a few pivots in hers, so we talked about that, and she was able to make a solid choice, her and her husband. And the thing that really got me was how she was so excited for how things had turned out for her. Again, we made a plan. We talked beforehand and communicated on the things that were important to her. And I supported her during her birth. Those things make a difference. And now, her second birth story, she is glowing when she tells it. She is same person, two different births. The first one not so good, although she had a healthy baby boy. The second one, I mean, she was just glowing as she talked about her birth experience. So it does, in fact, matter that you plan your birth. Do you recommend a water birth? I know plenty of women that have water births and that are very successful and downright swear by them. So they are an absolute great option, even if, so a lot of times, water births are done at home and now in birthing centers and at hospitals as well. So based on where you live and the type of facility that you plan to birth at, definitely talk it over and see if that is an option for you. And based on your pain tolerance, if you feel like you're really good at breathing through, cramps, and your pain tolerance is where you can handle it, then I absolutely think water births are amazing, especially if you don't have any extenuating health concerns for either you or the baby. I would not recommend a water birth if you are high risk for any reason. And that's just me, given a different birth team, they may support it. But as long as you're healthy, as long as you feel confident enough to be able to, you know, learn breathing techniques before birth, I think a water birth is fantastic. It definitely helps to relax you. That warm water really helps to take the edge off of those contractions, and it's an amazing experience. To experience a water birth is absolutely amazing. So best of luck to you. I hope it really works out if in fact that is your preference. Let me say these two other things about a water birth. One, I said this in a previous video. Y'all, I always am referencing my other videos, but I'll have to look back through my catalog to see which one it is. But in terms of water birth, you must move before you give birth. You have to, if you want a progressive birth, one that really, where the baby has dropped nice and low and you start to dilate, the best thing you can do is move your body ahead of time. So if you're considering water birth, two things I want you to do: discuss it with your provider beforehand, research where you're going to have the baby at to make sure that they can facilitate your birth preference, and then I need you to move. I know it's hard. I know you're tired. I know pregnancy fatigue sets in, but moving your body is going to help your body get into that birth mode. It's going to help to bring that baby down. It's going to help to widen and do everything you can possibly do naturally to optimize having a very progressive water birth. I don't think people understand when you say you want a water birth, that means you're willing to get in there and do the work. You're willing to eat well, you're willing to work and move, because that's what it takes in order for your body to naturally do what it is meant to do. And if you're willing to do that, a water birth is amazing. So I am wishing you all the best, mama. Your videos have been helping me get ready to give birth for the second time. Oh my gosh, that has truly made my day. That has made my day. I cannot tell you Yeah, that has made my day. Like 2025, I've been a doula for quite a while, and a lactation consultant, but I really wanted to go all in this year, and my goal has really been to help, even if I don't know the person, because a lot of times as a doula, you get to know your clients and things like that, and I'm like, I am going to go all in this year to help even people that I don't even know I'm helping. And so you just confirmed that for me. Thank you so much. And I am wishing you the best. You're going to do well. Um, Stick with me to the end, baby, because I got you. I'm going to help you right on through, okay? I am 34 weeks and my baby has dropped. I am having colic-like pains in my upper abdomen. Would you say it is Braxton Hicks? Also having terrible heartburn. Very good question, Stephanie. Um, so the way we know that they are Braxton Hicks is, um, or the marking point for you is going to be if they are mild, if they are short in duration, and if they eventually stop. So if they go in phases where like you are having contractions for a few minutes or even up to an hour and then they stop, then that is a marker that it's probably more of a Braxton Hicks and less of labor. Because once you enter into the labor phase, those contractions are not going to fall off. They will get more hour. You know, they start out like 10 or 15 minutes apart and then it goes down to like 7 to 10 minutes and then it goes down. You know, it within a few hours you're noticing, okay, these aren't going away. If anything, they're getting more intense. And the time in between is shorter. And so, also, another marker is if you're able to really breathe through them. If you are able to talk like we're talking and you just go, ah, okay, and then you're able to continue on, then it's likely Braxton Hicks. Now, giving all of those markers, if you have any questions, you should be in very close contact with your doula and your provider, because no, they know your medical history specifically, and so they will know like what's happening, and if there's any reason for them to believe that you are starting now to progress into full labor. So be sure to stay in close contact with them. Sometimes I feel like, my clients will say, well, I don't want to bug you. It's fine. You are at 34 weeks. You have earned the right to definitely, call the office and talk to a nurse. At your provider's office, a lot of times they'll have a nurse to triage and see what's going on, or if you have a doula who can also help you through that time. But those are just a few little markers for you to know. Like, is this something that I should call about or whatnot? And at the end of the day, I always say, trust your instinct, because if you know that this is a little different than what I've experienced before, then definitely go ahead and reach out to make sure that you are not entering into full labor. But oftentimes Braxton Hicks are very mild, far apart, and they stop. They come in waves. So you might get them like a few days in a row, but they're not continuous. They're not getting stronger and stronger. They're not coming closer and closer. If you start to experience that, you should definitely reach out to your provider. Very good questions and comments today. I am just so happy whenever I jump on and I'm able to help you guys by either teaching you something new that you didn't know or answering a question that you may have had, that's been floating around in your mind. If you guys don't have any more questions, I think that's it. That's all I see. Then, if you would like to work with me personally, I have two ways. You can book an intensive, or I have the Bump to Bundle Blueprint course, which will help you prepare for birth. Both are very good, by the way, because I just wouldn't do anything less than excellent. And also, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you are not already subscribed, because if you're pregnant and you're not subscribed to my channel, girl, I mean, I thought we were besties. So there's that. Subscribe to the channel. You can work with me in 2 different ways. Y'all, I am hopping on every day in January to go live. So you should also subscribe so you could turn on notifications and know when I go live. I will be live tomorrow, talking about some very interesting things. So you definitely want to stay tuned. I did also promise, I have linked the my hospital bag checklist below. So if you haven't already picked it up, and you want to pack your bag, then that free resource is below. Please check it out. Other than that, I love you guys. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, happy birthing. Bye.